Hey guys, it's Emily, and today I'm going to do a quick run through on how to create and loop through arrays using C# versus JavaScript. So, assuming that you already kind of have a basic understanding of how C# and JavaScript work, this is just going to be a quick tutorial on arrays. Since arrays are fairly simple, but they're kind of important, especially in JavaScript. In C#, there's like arrays and dictionaries and lists, and there's a bunch of different options for you. But it's just something that it's super important that you have a strong grasp on moving through programming, because working with large databases and stuff, you're going to need to understand how to keep all of objects, all of names. It's just really important to understand how to group all those things together. So in C#, you have to start with declaring the type of array that it's going to be. So whether that's a string or it's an int or it's an array of objects or whatever. So you need to specify the type of array that it's going to be. And you need to do your square bracket, which is universally kind of it is the indicator that you're making an array and not just a regular old variable. Because as you know, a variable could be like string Emily, and then that's a variable, and I could refer to Emily, and I could change the value of Emily if I wanted to instantiate it to Emily is equal to Emily. And now I have a string called Emily with the value Emily. So we're going to do an array, and we're going to call it names for the sake of this video. And then you have to do equals. In C#, you need the new keyword to specify that this is going to be a new instance of this array. You don't always have to put this next to the array, but it's recommended. So string names equals new string array. Again, you can pre-specify the length of the array, or as you add things to it, it'll automatically update the length. And you're also able to just end it here. If you wanted to do that, and then later on in your program, you can add things to your array by doing names.add, and then I could say names.add Emily, or you can specify exactly the values that are going to be in an array if you know already, which this is not commonly done, since usually arrays, they're added based off of a user action or user activity. But string names, for this case, we're gonna predetermine them. So I can get rid of this and say that our array is going to contain the values of Emily, Dean, and Casey. And then you need to end it with your semicolon. So now I have an array called names that has 3 string values in it. If I wanted to loop through this array and output it to the console, or to a Windows form or a list or whatever, in C# there's a thing called a for each loop. And a for each loop is specifically for looping through arrays or lists or dictionaries. That allows you to loop through objects or values, and it'll get the whole value. And you can also use a for loop, but a for each is a little bit simpler. So for each string item in names, so that's saying for each item in this array that is a string, do whatever I want this loop to do. So for each string item in names, I just want you to console.write line, and then it would just be item. Because when this is looping through, it's assigning the value of whatever's in the array to the string item. And so I can't actually show you what this is going to look like live, since I'm not on a partition of my Mac computer that will support it. This would write out each one of these names, one under another, in the console. So in JavaScript, it's just a little bit different. I had to start by making an index.html that links to my example.js folder. And I already made this one, I pre-made this one before. So as you can see, var names is equal to Emily, Dean, Casey. The declaration of the array is just a little bit different. In JavaScript, you don't have to actually declare the type. You can just say var, and the program will know what type it is based off of how you declare it later on. So if I wanted to make this an array of numbers, I could still call it names, and it would know that it's not numbers or it's not strings based on how I declare it later on. So in JavaScript, there isn't such thing as a for each loop. So you have to use a for loop, and again, in a for loop, you don't have to declare the type. You can just use var. So var I is equal to 0. It just looks like your standard for loop. You do names.length because that's telling, instead of the for each knowing that every time that you iterate and then it's going to stop once it gets through the entire array, that's just something that the for each loop does. The for loop, you have to specify exactly when you want the loop to stop. Otherwise, you'll be stuck in an infinite loop and it'll be a disaster. So this is saying that as long as I is less than names.length, so as long as the iteration does not exceed the length of this array, keep going. And then once it reaches the exact length of the array, the loop is going to stop and it's going to jump out. And when declaring to write to the console, as you can see in C# it's console write line, but in JavaScript it's just console log. And because it's not a for each loop, I actually have to specify the name of the array and the index that I want to be printed. So in this case, it would be whatever index the loop is currently looping on, print out that string element of the array. So if I were to go here and open this up in, say, Google Chrome, I have to go to View Developer, and I gotta go to my JavaScript console, and there's Emily, Dean, and Casey, just like we talked about in here. So, well, that's how you loop through and output a basic array. Again, if you wanted to add elements later on to your array, instead of .add, this would be names.push. And then I could say, let's add Brandon. Now if I save this and tried to open this again, and I went to View Developer JavaScript Console, now it's not going to show it because I did it after the for loop, and there's nothing that reprints it out. So let's say I could just do another console, or I could do another for loop. If I did put this here above the for loop, there we go. Now it should run. And there's Brandon. So you don't have to initialize your values right away, just like you don't have to in C#. And instead of .add, it's .push. And I made the mistake of, I added it after my for loop, but you can't actually do that because then there's nothing. Brandon was then added to the array, but there was nothing outputting it after I had added Brandon. If I had outputted the length, it would have shown that there were 4 items in the array, that the length of the array was 4, but it wouldn't have told you what that other value was. So that's the major differences. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you later.